He thought it was just another night of passion, 10 rounds with a woman nearly twice his age, but by sunrise, he wasn't moaning with pleasure anymore. He was screaming in agony. His manhood was literally rotting before his eyes, and doctors would later uncover a chilling truth behind what really happened that night. Stay with me, because this is a story you won't forget. Welcome back to Dark Motives, the place where the darkest crimes and shocking human stories are revealed. If you love true crime stories told raw and unfiltered, then you're in the right place. Before we dive deeper into this disturbing case, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a single story. Trust me, what you're about to hear tonight, you won't find anywhere else, and I want you to do something right now. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. I love knowing how far these stories travel. All right, let's step inside this nightmare together. This shocking case began in Atlanta, Georgia, a city known for its nightlife, its energy, and its secrets. The man at the center of this story was a 27-year-old who locals described as quiet but restless. He worked odd jobs, often seen drifting through different neighborhoods trying to find his place in the world. He wasn't wealthy, he wasn't famous, but he had one weakness. He could never resist temptation. And then there was her. A 62-year-old woman, well known in her community, respected by some, whispered about by others. She lived alone in a modest house on the east side of Atlanta. To outsiders, she looked harmless, just another older woman enjoying her retirement years. But behind closed doors, she carried a reputation. People said she liked her men young, very young. When their paths crossed one humid summer night, it wasn't fate. It was a setup that would end in disaster, because what started as an invitation into her home would soon turn into something far more sinister. It was late on a Friday night in Atlanta when he first walked into the dimly lit lounge where she sat. The air was thick with cigarette smoke, the low hum of jazz music spilling from the speakers. She stood out instantly. Her presence commanded attention. While most women her age stayed home, she sat confidently at the bar, sipping from a tall glass, her eyes scanning the room like she was hunting for something, or someone. When their eyes locked, he felt a pull. She wasn't shy. She leaned forward, flashing a knowing smile that promised more than just small talk. In that moment, he wasn't thinking about her age, her background, or what might come after. He only saw the confidence, the allure, and the way she made him feel like he was the only man in the room. Minutes turned into hours as they talked. She asked about his life, his frustrations, his dreams. He told her things he hadn't told anyone else. But the way she looked at him, it wasn't sympathy. It was hunger. And when she finally whispered in his ear that he should follow her home, he didn't hesitate for a second. The ride back to her house was quiet, almost too quiet. He stared out the car window, his pulse racing. Deep down, a voice inside him whispered that something about this felt strange. But when they pulled up to her small home on the east side, that voice grew silent. The door opened, and with it came the smell of candles, perfume, and something faintly bitter in the air. Inside, she wasted no time. She closed the curtains, locked the doors, and pulled him into the bedroom. He thought he was about to live out every man's fantasy, an older woman who knew exactly what she wanted. What he didn't realize was that this night of passion, a night that would stretch into 10 exhausting rounds, was the very thing that would bring him to his knees by sunrise. By midnight, the house was filled with muffled laughter, the creak of the bed frame, and the heavy rhythm of exhaustion. 10 times. That was the number. He had pushed his body past its limit, chasing a high that felt endless. She urged him on each time, never satisfied, her grip on him almost unnatural. But as the clock struck 3 in the morning, the pleasure began to twist into something darker. At first, it was a sharp sting, a pain he brushed off as fatigue. But soon the burning became unbearable. He excused himself to the bathroom, turning on the dim light, his hands trembling as he looked down. What he saw made his stomach drop. His manhood was swollen, raw, and discolored. The skin looked strange, almost as if it were bruising from the inside out. He splashed cold water, but the pain only intensified. Panic set in. He stumbled back into the bedroom, whispering that something was wrong. She only smiled faintly, like she had seen it before. Her silence was chilling. By dawn, the pain had escalated into agony. Every second felt like fire eating him alive. He could no longer stand. He collapsed on the bedroom floor, clutching himself, screaming as the swelling grew worse. His body was betraying him, and the woman who had drawn him into this night of endless desire just watched from the corner of the room. Neighbors would later say they heard the cries through the thin walls, a man's voice breaking into desperate pleas. What they didn't know was that inside that small East Side Atlanta home, something far more sinister was unfolding. The night had ended, but his nightmare was only beginning. By sunrise, his screams were so intense that even she realized there was no hiding it anymore. With hesitation, she finally called for a ride to the emergency room. Neighbors watched from their porches as he staggered out of the house, barely able to walk, clutching himself in unbearable pain. His face was drenched in sweat, his body shaking like he was on the edge of collapse. When they arrived at Grady Memorial Hospital in Atlanta, the nurses rushed him into a private room. The moment they peeled back the sheets, gasps filled the room. His manhood was grotesquely swollen, the skin turning black in places. The smell was unmistakable. Something inside him was rotting, fast. Doctors immediately suspected an aggressive infection. They ran tests, checked his vitals, and within minutes confirmed their worst fear. He was suffering from necrotizing fasciitis, a flesh-eating bacteria that spreads rapidly, killing tissue as it moves. The staff knew that if they didn't act immediately, he wouldn't survive another day. The young man begged them to save him, tears streaming down his face, his voice breaking as the reality sank in. He hadn't just lost a night of passion. He was on the verge of losing his life. The lead doctor ordered emergency surgery, but even he knew the damage might already be irreversible. And as the medical team prepared for the operation, one question lingered in everyone's mind. How did a healthy 27-year-old man end up with a deadly infection after just one night with a woman more than twice his age? The operating room lights burned bright as the surgeons worked frantically. They cut away at the infected flesh, their gloved hands moving quickly but carefully, trying to stay ahead of the bacteria that was spreading like wildfire. Every minute mattered. Every second determined whether he would walk out of that hospital alive or not at all. By the time the surgery ended, the doctors had removed nearly everything they could. What remained of his manhood was unrecognizable. The room was heavy with silence. The team knew they had saved his life for now, but the man who had gone into that bedroom a night earlier would never be the same again. Meanwhile, investigators began asking questions about the woman who had brought him in. She had quietly slipped out of the hospital the moment he was admitted, leaving no information behind. Nurses remembered her face, sharp, calm, almost cold, but when police went to her East Side home, she was gone. Whispers began spreading through the community. Some claimed she had been with other young men before, men who mysteriously vanished or ended up in the hospital with strange infections. No one had proof, but the pattern was undeniable. Older woman, younger partners, and consequences too horrifying to ignore. As the young man lay unconscious in recovery, the detectives assigned to the case began piecing together her history, and what they uncovered about her past relationships would leave even seasoned investigators shaken. When detectives pulled her record, they found almost nothing official. No criminal history, no arrests. On paper, she was a retired woman living quietly in Atlanta. But when they started speaking to people who knew her, a very different picture began to form. Neighbors described her as friendly but strange. She rarely came out during the day, but at night, cars with young men often parked outside her home. Some stayed for hours, others never returned. One man who lived 2 streets over claimed his cousin had spent a night with her back in 2019, and ended up in the hospital with a severe infection doctors couldn't explain. Digging deeper, detectives found whispers in old community forums and even on Facebook groups. Stories about a woman in her 60s who was infamous for seducing men half her age. Some said she spiked their drinks. Others said she experimented with dangerous substances during intimacy. No one could prove it, but the rumors painted her as more than just an eccentric older woman. Former lovers who were willing to talk described her as controlling, almost predatory. She demanded exhausting physical encounters, pushing her partners far beyond what they could handle. One even claimed she kept strange powders and liquids in her bedside drawer, things he had never seen before. The more investigators heard, the clearer it became. This wasn't an isolated incident. This 62-year-old woman carried a trail of broken men behind her, and the one fighting for his life in the hospital might have just been the latest victim in a pattern that had gone unchecked for years. Detectives wasted no time tracking her movements. Security cameras near the hospital caught her leaving in the early morning hours, slipping into a cab without a single glance back. From there, her trail went cold. They checked her house again, but it looked abandoned. Clothes gone, drawers emptied, and a faint smell of bleach lingering in the air. It was as if she had prepared for this moment, as if she knew the night would end in disaster. Investigators pulled her financial records and were stunned to find a series of unusual withdrawals. Thousands of dollars taken out in cash over the past month, always in small increments. To detectives, it looked like someone preparing to vanish. Meanwhile, back at the hospital, the young man was awake. His body was weak, his spirit broken. He could barely speak, but when detectives asked about that night, he whispered a single chilling sentence. She knew what was happening, and she wanted it. The case had shifted. This was no longer just about a medical emergency. It was now a hunt for a woman who seemed to have vanished into thin air. And the deeper investigators dug, the more they realized. They weren't chasing an accident. They were chasing a predator. For weeks she was a ghost. No bank cards, no phone activity, not a single trace. Detectives feared she had slipped out of Georgia entirely. But then, a breakthrough came from an unexpected place. A hotel clerk in Birmingham, Alabama reported seeing a woman matching her description, traveling alone, paying strictly in cash and always asking for rooms far from the lobby cameras. Police in Birmingham coordinated with Atlanta detectives. They set up surveillance at bus terminals, motels, and even late-night diners. And sure enough, just after midnight she was spotted stepping off a Greyhound bus, dragging a small suitcase. When officers approached, she didn't run. She simply looked at them, gave a thin smile and whispered, "I knew you'd come." Her arrest made local headlines. The media called her the Widow of the Night, a name that spread across Georgia and beyond. Reporters swarmed the courthouse, desperate to know if she had been intentionally harming her lovers. But even in custody, she kept her secrets close, refusing to explain why so many men who spent the night with her ended up broken, sick, or worse. In the courtroom, the atmosphere was electric. The young man she left mutilated was there, hidden under a hood, his face pale as he listened to the testimony. Doctors described the irreversible damage. Neighbors spoke of the late-night visitors. Former lovers, some trembling as they testified, told stories that matched almost detail for detail. Long nights, strange substances, and pain that lingered for weeks after. The defense tried to paint her as nothing more than an older woman living her life, arguing that the men had consented. But the prosecution was relentless. They showed medical records, hospital reports, and a timeline that connected her to multiple victims over the span of years. To the jury, it no longer looked like chance. It looked like a pattern. And when she finally took the stand, her words sent chills through the courtroom. Calm, steady, almost smug, she said, "They wanted me. I never forced them. If their bodies couldn't handle it, that's not my fault." Those words sealed her fate. After deliberating for less than 4 hours, the jury delivered the verdict. Guilty, on multiple counts of reckless endangerment, assault, and intentional harm. The judge looked at her with disgust as he sentenced her to 25 years in prison without the possibility of parole. The courtroom erupted. Some cheered, others cried, and the young man at the center of it all simply lowered his head, knowing justice had been served, but also realizing his life would never be the same. And so, the story of the young man and the 62-year-old woman came to an end, not with passion but with punishment. A single night of desire left him scarred for life, and exposed a predator who had hidden in plain sight for years. It's a chilling reminder that not every smile hides good intentions and not every invitation leads to pleasure. Sometimes the most dangerous traps are the ones we walk into willingly. Now I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below and tell me, where are you watching this from tonight? I love seeing how far these stories travel, and your comments help this community grow. If this story kept you hooked until the very end, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell. Here on Dark Motives, I bring you the darkest, most shocking true crime stories every single week. And trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming next. Until then, stay safe, stay aware, and remember, sometimes the real danger isn't in the shadows. It's sitting right beside you.